Pledge, and Mary's going to lead us in the singing of God Bless America, so if you can all stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who is going to give us an overview of what FairTax is, but he's also going to speak to us about the unintended consequences of what goes on the state and federal level and how it affects your property taxes. We're all in the midst of seeing increases in property taxes, so to really know what's going on with that. So I'd like to present Dave Corsi. Thank you, Dave.
Just give me the high sign when you walk.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
About 45. Let's see what we have.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to pass these out. These are cards that are talk about the FairTax and what it is. I'm doing that a little bit about myself. She said, my name is Dave Corsi. I am a member of FairTax New Jersey and the District 12 Director. I also ran for Congress, some of you may recall, in last year, and the Republican primary down in the 12th Congressional District, which goes along up in Hunterdon County. It's gerrymandering at its worst. Territory literally went from up in the Delaware River, Hunterdon County, down to the Jersey Shore. I live over by the Jersey Shore. Believe it or not, it kind of went like this. And again, that's government for you, gerrymandering. Somehow they came up with this map, and it's being redone now. As you may know, probably where a couple of weeks ago they came out with the state legislative map. Now they have to do the one for the federal again, which would be for the congressional races. So hopefully that'll come out fairly well, and it'll get a little better on their lines and things like that, try to make them a little more equal. It was funny because I had gone there, and they all talk about how they're trying to make them impartial and all this. To me, it was simple. If you look at a map of New Jersey, just take it, run lines across. You roughly have 600,000 people per congressional district. Just run a line across. Why does it have to be a big deal? Irregardless if people are Republican or Democrat, you get your 600,000 and then let the people run and let the chips fall where they may. But part of the thing, I don't know if you noticed, but in the last one, the man who gave the deciding vote said, well, he wanted there to be some continuity to it. Meaning, he wanted some safe seats. Why should any seat be safe? Isn't that the idea that they're almost in effect taking the vote away from you or what your vote means? It should be open for everyone. Unfortunately, special interests that we talk about tonight with the FairTax are always looking to cover their self-interest. The other thing, I'm a member of the Bay Shore Tea Party. I am the director for urban outreach, which is one of the things, if you notice, Tea Parties have been accused of what? Being racist, white only, that kind of nonsense. And again, if you look at a lot of Tea Party groups, you mostly see white folks there. So what we're trying to do is say, no, absolutely not. We want everyone. Everyone's getting screwed here. And it's about time we start doing everyone. You've noticed, huh? So the point is to get everyone involved. So what we're looking to do, we're going to be going into urban areas, inner cities. A lot of folks there know that they have been getting the short shaft for years. Unfortunately, let's use the Republican Party as our whipping boy. They're basically brain dead when it comes to going into inner cities and talking to folks. Now, most people don't realize it, but if you think about it, historically, which political party had it in their platform to free the slaves?
Republican.
The Republican Party. Which party had it in their platform they wanted to keep people enslaved?
Democrats.
The Democrats. Which party was the party of the Ku Klux Klan?
Democrats.
The Democrats. When you always heard about Bull Connor back in the early 60s with the hose on the students, those George Wallace, Maddox, all of those governors who sat in front of the room saying, "We won't let any black students in here," they're all Democrats. You think the Republicans would have enough brains to point that out?
No.
Bottom line for the Republican Party is they're basically brain dead when it comes to public relations. They really stink at it.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why they live in mortal fear of folks like you and the Tea Party. Because you're basically telling them, like, remember the movie Network, Peter Finch? I'm going to date myself here.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's mad as hell I'm not going to take it anymore. They're afraid that you guys are now jumping off the reservation, so to speak, and tell them we're not going to put up with it anymore. I know a lot of people are furious with what happened last week with John Bonner, right?
Yeah.
Now, I was taking odds. I assumed he would, he would hold out at least a day or two to kind of show he had some guts.
That's what
I figured, we figured, he could actually show that. The man couldn't even hold out until midnight. They got it. The only thing that's going to change here is if we get rid of the wimps. Bottom line, that they have to go. I mean, I equate everything to baseball. And you can't keep putting 220 hitters up cleanup and think you're going to win anything. Republicans keep doing it. They put up a 220 hitter and they're like, gee, maybe we'll win this time. They're in fantasy land. They have to toughen up their act. And especially in a state like New Jersey, their strategy has always been, well, we'll try to take the suburban areas. Everybody knows the demographics in New Jersey are getting more and more mixed, either racially, culturally, whatever. So instead of realizing that, I'll still sit there and have them talk to me about, well, if they could just take a certain lily white suburb, they may have a chance. They've got losers limp really bad. And that's why the great thing, again, about Tea Party folks is letting them know they're not going to put up with it anymore. You're tired of these folks really doing this to you. The other thing, before we get started, I used to do a radio show called Let's Talk Real Estate years ago. My business is real estate investing. And also I did a show down in Asbury Park called The Lowdown, which was more of a political show. And starting this Thursday, I'm going to be becoming a co-host on a radio show called Conservative Commandos down in South Jersey. Unfortunately, the signal doesn't go this far. However, you could catch it on the internet. It's called Conservative Commando. It's on Thursdays from 2 to 5, but again, you can almost, download it onto your computer and listen to it at any time. It's on WIFI 1460 AM and WNJC 1360 AM. Excuse me, so that will be starting this Thursday. So,
We need to write that down.
yeah, I'm sorry.
We need to write that
Okay,
down.
yeah, but the main thing, remember the words, keyword in Conservative Commando. And then you can see the downloading instructions, etc. Okay, now to the topic of the evening, the FairTax. How many of you folks have heard of the FairTax? Good, about half the room. The objective with the FairTax New Jersey is to make it a household name. Anybody familiar with the names Frank Pallone and Anna Little?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Frank Pallone used against Anna Little saying, oh, she's going to raise your taxes 23% to get people afraid. He was talking about the fair tax, but what he didn't explain was how the fair tax worked, because when most people understand it, they're thinking, sounds good to me, let's do it. So tonight, my objective here is to make you familiar with the fair tax and to make it a household name in New Jersey so no one can ever turn around and pull the shenanigans again and say, oh, you're trying to raise our taxes another 23%. We can't afford what we're paying now. I was out there today at the Brick Post Office with another fair tax representative handing out postcards. What better day than today when the taxes are due, right? Because everybody's really not too happy. As you see the faces as they're walking into that post office, and they're ticked off. And hopefully they are ticked off. They should be, because they've been getting set up and taken advantage of for years. Anyhow, the fair tax, a little bit of history. About 20 some odd years ago, a bunch of fellows, these are very wealthy fellows who lived in either Dallas or Houston, Texas, I forget which one. And one of them was, they all own businesses, one's complaining about the taxes, this, that, and the other thing. They used to have this little mini think tank thing going on. And one of them said, well, you're always complaining about taxes so much, why don't we make that our project? Try to come up with a better tax system, which really shouldn't be hard when you consider the U.S. tax system's a national disgrace. Side note. So, what they did was, they actually said, okay, good idea, let's do it. They hired a bunch of economists and all to look into it to come up with what they thought would make sense. They all thought they were going to come up with something like the flat tax. So are you all familiar with the flat tax?
Yes.
Okay. What is the flat tax?
The percentage
Of
what you spend.
No.
It's on your income.
Yes, it's a flat tax based on your income. The general flat tax is 17% of your income. Okay. They thought the economists, the experts were going to come up with that. They didn't. They came up with something different in the sense it is a flat tax, the fair tax. However, it's based on consumption instead of income, which is very important. Income can go up and down. Consumption is a much more stable tax base when you look at it. To prove it, since 1900, consumption in this country year over year has never gone down. Every year it has increased. Now you may say, how can that be, like during the Great Depression or during a recession? How could it be that we consume more this year than we did last year? Simple. Exponentially because of an increase in population. So our number has never gone down, so it's a much more stable tax base. Some of you folks heard last year, what happened to Social Security last year? It went negative, right? More money went out last year than came in. Wasn't supposed to happen until 2018. Happened in 2010. Why? It's based on payroll, right? The payroll taxes. Social Security and Medicare are what we call the payroll tax. When they take out the FICA on your tax return, on your W-2, that's Social Security and Medicare. Now, when unemployment goes from 5% up, doubles to 10%, suddenly millions less people working, less money coming into their coffers, therefore, they have less money set aside. Now, would it have been better and been much more stable if it had been based on consumption? Because the numbers still would have made sense. Besides, obviously, the fact that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, which if you want, we can talk about later on. But the point is, it's a much more stable way to tax something. The fair tax is also being known as a national sales tax. It's a consumption tax. What it will do is when you go to a store or buy a service, like go to the doctor, you will pay the tax then. You pay it then and you're done. It replaces your income taxes, your payroll taxes, capital gains taxes, inheritance taxes, an alternative minimum tax. All those taxes that are taken out now are done away with. You pay when you go to the store, you're done. No tax forms to file. No worrying about the IRS. No longer will your tax dollars be spent because they want to debate whether or not somebody's home office deduction is legit because they're saying it's 5 square feet too small or too big or whatever the nonsense is. Because think about that. You know, some people say, well, that doesn't affect me. They're auditing them. Oh, you better believe it affects you. Who's paying for that in tax court? Is that not your tax dollars being spent on that? Is that a good use of your money? Americans spend $350 billion a year to prepare their taxes. Countless hours. Couldn't we come up with a much more better use of that money and time in this country? Actually investing it in something that produces? One of the things I pointed out when I was running for Congress was, unless we're willing and until we do change our tax code, everything else doesn't matter. We're doomed. There is no way we could continue doing the taxes the way we do them and think that we can survive as a country. 50% of the people in this country right now are not paying any income tax. So all you folks who are, half the country owes you a thank you. But think about it, 50% are not producing.
What about the taxation without representation?
Oh, that's been gone many years. Oh, that was gone years ago.
Yeah.
You know, they make believe they're representing you, but it's basically special interest and things like that, which we're going to get into a little bit more shortly. I just wanted to lay the framework here. So everybody understands it's a flat tax rate based on, consumption. Meaning, If you make $1,000 a week, you will get your $1,000 a week check direct. You're not going to get anything taken out except for your state withholding. In New Jersey, that would run roughly $60 a week. So if you have $1,000 a week pay, take off 60, you come home with a check for $940. How much do you come home with now under the current system? Any guesses?
50%.
Roughly about 700. You roughly come home with 700. So now you'll be coming home with over $240 more in your pocket. And the best thing is, you now have control, not some bureaucrat, not some politician in Washington telling you how they want you to spend. Everybody remember, for instance, when Bill Clinton was president and he said he upped the tax rate because he was going after the rich and everybody was clapping like this is wonderful. Okay, but what else did he do? Yes, he's raising the rate for the rich to make sure they pay. But he's going to expand the child's credit. He's going to give them additional medical benefit, whatever. There were all these little things. Why do they do it that way?
Do it that way to get you sucked into the system and make sure, you know, when people complain about, they don't want to lose the deduction once they have. It's a sucker game, it's really.
Exactly. It's a sucker game. They want you confused because if you're confused, you will not complain. Because you're going to sit there and look at your spouse and say, are we better off or aren't we? I don't know. They got it. What are you going to do? Are you going to complain? No, because you've got a deduction and now you're going to be docile about it and say, okay. You're not going to sit there and go, wait a minute, I think I just got taken advantage of. They do it to control you. For instance, in New Jersey, one of the goals of FairTax New Jersey has been to try to get our congressmen to come on and be a co-sponsor of the FairTax bill that's currently in Congress. We have had no luck. And I don't like to be a wet rag, but I try to explain to them, our chances of getting our congressmen, our incumbents who've been there a long time, to go in favor of the FairTax are slim and none. Why? They've weaned on a system that was designed for special interests to reward them, so they get them to come to their cocktail parties. Why? Do they come to their cocktail parties and pay $500,000 a plate? Why? Because they like them? I don't think so. It's to buy influence. Bottom line.
Both parties, Congressman.
Both parties, absolutely. It's got nothing to do with one party or the other. They all do. They want to buy influence. Suddenly, you're telling them, I want you to disavow everything you've done. I want you to get away from the thing of all those you good buddies who have been basically paying you off. And we act surprised that they refuse to. Under the guise, well, we're not sure if this would work, or we must be prudent. Prudent. They use the word prudent. Think about that. These guys put you $14 trillion in a hole, and they actually have the nerve to use the word prudent to you. Think about that. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. Now, first thing you're probably thinking is what? By the way, audience participation, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me anytime. Sir, did you have a...
Yeah.
Go.
All right, let's assume that this is in play. How then what are the traps for a government to manipulate this in your mind?
Well, the traps, if it goes in the way it is, there aren't any traps per se. What you have to be aware of is how the original income tax started. It was a flat tax. 1% on anybody made over 50 grand. It's changed a bit since then. We now have a 65,000-page tax code that nobody has read. Not a person alive understands. Everyone knows about every year Money Magazine does that thing where they get 20 accountants to take a hypothetical family of 4 and give them their tax, you know, what they did for the year, and every accountant comes up with a different figure. Think about that. There's not a person alive who has legitimately done their taxes in this country without, quote, cheating. And by the way, in tax court, you are guilty until proven innocent. It's different than civil court, where you're innocent until proven guilty. There, you have to prove it. How long do you have to hold on to your tax papers?
7 years.
7 years. Is that true?
10.
10. Anybody else have a guess? Forever. Here's why. 7 years is the number, unless you committed fraud. I'm the IRS. I think you committed fraud.
What they want.
Now what? You're guilty until you prove your innocence. If you threw away your papers, you have a problem. It's a rigged system. And it's not the kind of thing we have to change. I saw a question in the back.
Yes, first, please explain the difference between the fair tax and the value-added tax in use in Europe and in the Republic of Israel, for example. And second, would foreign visitors be able to get a refund of their fair tax paid on goods bought in the United States when they got to the airport to get on their planes to go back home?
Okay. Would tourists pay the fair tax here, and do they get a special exemption? No, they pay it. They pay the, think about it, 300 million people are now paying tax instead of half the country. Everybody pays. Criminals pay. Drug dealers go to the store and buy their girlfriend a Maserati like everyone else. Pay the tax. Illegal immigrants pay the tax. They go in a store, they buy something, they pay a tax. My son goes in a store and buys something, he's paying the tax. It's a much more stable tax base. Now, the value-added tax. Is everyone familiar with the VAT? Excuse me. Value-added tax is a tax that politicians love, and here's why. It's a hidden tax. At each level of production, a surcharge tax is added. So let's say I'm a store owner, and you folks all make part of the product that finally, let's say it's a lawnmower. Each one of you contribute a part to it. I'm Lowe's or Home Depot. Finally, let's say Sue comes in to buy the lawnmower from me. Now last year the lawnmower cost $300. Suddenly it went up to $360. What is she gonna think? Oh, Home Depot, well, they raised their tax, they're looking to make a bigger profit. I didn't make any more money. It was just that at each level of production, your costs increased, so it was added to the final bill. So finally, the lawnmower had to go from $300 up to $360. Politicians love it because they're not blamed for it. Europe loves it. Now, if you've noticed, Obama and Paul Volcker have been running trial balloons, trying to see if they can get a VAT tax here. They are desperate for money. They have to. Remember what we said before about Social Security? Does anyone know how much money they've borrowed from the Social Security trust funds? You know, all those IRAs. A dollar amount. Give me a dollar amount. They haven't borrowed all of it, by the way, but they're working on it. Any idea? $2 trillion. Now, they we'll be generous. They borrow $2 trillion.
How are they going to pay it back? Now, we're the ones that put it in there in the first place.
Oh, you've got it. It was your money. They took your money, borrowed your money from you, have no way to pay it back. How's the only way they raise money? By taxing you. You're going to pay twice for that.
Okay, so what are we going to do about it?
Well,
I
want to march on Washington.
Washington.
I want to march, and you got to throw the bums out, and you've got to do away with the Social Security system the way it's set up right now. You've got to go more to 401k type programs. When I ran for Congress, one of the things I was asked about were pensions. I said, first thing I believe is get away with congressional pensions. Why should you folks be paying my pension?
Well, let them
I'm a
get
big
Social
boy. It's
Security
my
after it
responsibility.
runs out.
It's not your responsibility.
How many congressmen, senators are on the fair tax? And the next one important thing is the presidential candidates.
Okay,
I know
70. There are 70 in House of Representatives who are sponsors right now, roughly 70, of the fair tax proposal, which is a good number. Each time we're getting it up. Every week we're adding a few. And obviously if we get to 218, hallelujah. Senators, I believe we have about 5 or 6 right now. Presidential candidates, there are 2 main ones, Mike Huckabee and Herman Cain. We're both running with Republicans. Excuse me?
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's got the nerves to do it.
No. I'm talking about who are in favor of the fair tax. Trump hasn't said anything yet. Herman Cain and Mike Huckabee are the 2 presidential candidates right now who are in favor of the fair tax.
What is Mitt pushing?
He's kind of talking about lowering the bracket. The same thing mumbo jumbo the rest of them won't get. You know, they want to tweak around the edges. We can't tweak around the edges. You got 65,000 pages of special interest, garbage, and loopholes. It has to get cleaned out. You can't reform that system.
Where's Sarah standing?
She kind of is, from what I gather, in the middle too. I honestly don't know her tax proposal. But I know she hasn't said the fair tax.
I heard her say flat or fair.
Okay. Okay, good. It's, you know, I will tell you this. I used to be a flat tax person 10 years ago. I was in favor of the flat tax. The more and more I learned about the fair tax, because at first I said, no, the fair tax, no way. The more and more I, you know, and that's what I want tonight to be. So you start thinking about it, because what eventually happens, the more and more I thought about it, you go, well, that system makes more sense. It really does make more sense.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
monopolizing. Fair and flat. What's the the difference?
The flat tax is a tax based on income. It's a flat tax rate based on your income. So you're taxed on income. The fair tax is a tax that's based on your consumption when you go buy something.
Well, what is the main weakness of the fair tax that people are using? Because that's basically
The main weakness-
when economies go up, it's plenty of money. When it's going down,
Okay. You weren't in the room when I mentioned it, but consumption historically has never gone down since 1900, year after year, because exponentially population grows every year. So there's never been a year where the number actually went down, believe it or not. And you can look that up. That's basic economic, information there. But the weakness I will get to is a question about fairness, where they say for a family that doesn't earn as much money, why is it fair that a family of four that earns $40,000 a year, because the tax is on everything, no exceptions except, quote, education. So when you go buy food, clothing, etc., you will pay the tax. Now most people gasp at that point, but I'm going to explain they came up with a brilliant way to correct that. Because obviously it's not fair for you, if you're making $40,000 a year, to have to spend $200 a week on your food bill and pay tax on that, whereas Warren Buffett, obviously that's a lot less portion of his income. So it's addressed. Sir?
I need a clarification on,
Sure.
on the history before income tax. Is it someone who said that it's unconstitutional the way they're imposing the collection of it,
Okay.
and they did it for
Okay, the history of the income tax. Original income tax in the United States was during the Civil War. Raised money for the war. Then they repealed it after that. Over the years, Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional. Congress, to remedy that, around 1913, passed 16th Amendment. Personally, I don't think it's unconstitutional. The Constitution says they can raise income tax. They have the power to tax, and they can raise income. People like to parse language and all. I don't like that. I can't stand when politicians do it. The bottom line is, technically, it is constitutional for them to do it. The problem is, the system is so bad and so rigged that we're being set up. And I can give you examples. My big thing, too, is about class warfare. I'm a big proponent of class warfare. They want class warfare, I'm more than happy to give it to them. Kennedy wants to talk about it, cares about the poor, let's see your tax return. Yeah. Put your money where your mouth is, big shot. That's the bottom line. You've got all these people claiming they're for the poor, show me your tax return. And as a matter of fact, I have something hot off the presses today where they're complaining that the rich are hardly paying their fair share in taxes. But if you read the story, it's hysterical. And Orrin Hatch, to his credit, finally said, it's voluntary. My question always has been for Warren Buffett, you're complaining you don't pay enough in taxes? It's a voluntary system. Pay it. Their excuse is, well, that won't solve the problem. Oh, yes, it will. Oh, yes, it will. Joseph Kennedy died, Kennedy, patriarch of the family. The man died with a $300 million estate. The estate tax was 50% at the time. He owed $150 million. How much do you think his family paid in estate tax? $134,000. I have a real problem with that, especially when I got to listen to the Kennedy family ad nauseum talk to me about how much they care about the poor. They don't care about the poor. They couldn't give a rat's what about the poor. They care about themselves, and that's what the problem is. That's why something like this, if you're sitting around waiting for false help for people, as you were talking to me before about what goes on with the aid pack, absolutely. These people are looking to help themselves. Under something like the fair tax, you're helping by contributing. For instance, I have been asked, Asbury Park editorial board meeting on congressional debate. I explained the fair tax, and the editor said to me, well, what if everybody stopped doing what?
Pay.
Buying, right? If you stop buying stuff.
Or stop paying.
I kept a straight face. I will let you know, I kept a straight face when she said it to me. I said, well, you can do that. You can do that now, right? So what do you mean? I said, well, you get a check from the Asbury Park Press. Okay, they take out your income taxes, but then aren't you given a net check? Sure, right? I said, well, do you take it home and put it in a bank or put it on your table and never touch it? She goes, no, I have to buy it. I said, yeah, very good. You buy things. Nobody, I know my wife, now she doesn't spend a lot of money, but I know if I was making a ton of money, she's not going to let me just put it on the kitchen table so we can glance at it all night. You use it to do things. There's a blend. You buy things, invest. You save money that helps invest because that creates prosperity and opportunity. And some of it you save.
How do you collect it?
Excuse, the fair tax? Any retail outlet, the same way they do the sales tax right now. How do they collect it when you go to a store and pay New Jersey sales tax?
No, what happens is you put a lot into the hands of individual businesses
Yes.
to cough the money up. And once you, the question is, do you trust the business or the IRS?
I trust the business. You generally trust the business, and here's why. Because right now, how many entities you'll be collecting the tax on? About 30 to 40 million entities in the United States. Right now, they're collecting from 130 to 140 count businesses and people. Now, they also talk in the fair tax, a lot of people talk about it'll do away with the IRS. Personally, I don't believe that for a minute. You still need somebody to collect taxes.
Yeah, but.
Well, it's the IRS.
How about just
But
one
you're
tax
taking,
for everybody?
everybody remembers Santa Claus is coming to town when they defang the abominable snowman? That's what you're doing. They can't, okay, they become, their job is to collect taxes, not to harass you and say, is your home office deduction big enough? Should you have written that off? Or be terrorized by the IRS? That's not supposed to be their job. What gave them the right? I didn't say anything when you talk about the Constitution. I didn't say anything where they've got the right to terrorize people. Albert Einstein said the most difficult thing in the world for him to understand was the U.S. tax code. Right. Now, Einstein was considered fairly intelligent, right? What was he talking about?
And you're getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Raise taxes on everything when they should just have one tax and that's it. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Well, what he was trying to say was not that he couldn't understand the mechanism of it. He just could not understand. Why would you tax the producer? Why tax production? If you tax production, in effect, you're going to get what?
Less production.
Less of it.
Production, yeah.
If you want more, you make it so people will freely do it, voluntarily, and that's what happens.
I
Ma'am?
think it's a little murky though, on like, you know, being, if I listen to you, you're saying that everything on the retail level, the retail stores have the responsibility to collect the taxes and send it in. Nobody
Yes.
else has to worry about that.
No. Forgive me, my business is real estate investing. I buy houses, I rehab them, I rent some of them out. Every month, my tenant pays me, I have to remit some of that for taxes.
I know. Okay, so you're just a conduit, basically.
Exactly, I'm a conduit, I would be a conduit. Now, let's say you go to Walmart. Will Walmart take the chance of not paying the tax and going to jail for you? You know, we make a deal that you're not going to pay. No, they're not going to. You're still going to have a black market. Don't get, you know, we're not blind and think there's not going to be no black market. But overall, people are just not going to deal with it, hassle with it. It's not worth it. It's
So what do
not
they do,
worth it.
disappear?
I'm sorry, what?
So what happens, the production just disappears, people disappear? Like where?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
All right, maybe I wasn't following it.
Yeah, what I'm saying is there's going to always be a black market. That's human nature. You're never going to get away from that. But overall, most people now do not go on a black market and buy things, right? But our real economy, the one above board, is still a heck of a lot bigger than our black market economy, right?
There's a book called The Forgotten Man, and now they're
Amity
talking,
Shales.
and
Yeah,
they're
great
talking
book.
about the movie Atlas Shrugged.
Yes.
And they're talking about, you know, hey, if you're going to keep imposing and regulating and taxing,
Right.
we're just going to go away. And then you're going to run out of
Right.
money to transfer and redistribute.
Has everybody read Atlas Shrugged?
Long ago.
One of the greatest books of all time. I could have done without the romantic part of it. But the concept to me, she wrote it in 1957, Ayn Rand. 1957, she was so far ahead of her time. And for you folks who don't know it, what the book is about is what happens if the producers say, you're right, we're going to all sit around now and sing Kumbaya and not produce. And literally, she nails on the head the stupid moves that the government will do. They keep rephrasing words, you know, taxes become contribution. I mean, she nails it right on the head. It's absolutely brilliant. But the point is, I used to always think about that. Even before I ever heard of the book, I used to say, you know, I listen to Tom Daschle or whoever start berating the guy who produces, how evil he is. I'm thinking, what if the guy finally said, hey, Tom, you're right. I am bad. I've been a bad boy all this time. From now on, I'm sitting down singing Kumbaya, and I'm going to do anything. Now where's Tom going to get his money to?
Right, that's the third.
To so-called help. The reason I despise liberal politicians, what we call liberal politicians, because we're really not liberal. Personally, we're considered conservative. I hate the word conservative. We're not conservatives. We're what really is known as classical liberals. Today's liberal, supposedly, what does the word liberal mean? You're free. You're open-minded. You believe in individual liberty and freedom for people. Oh, really? Aren't these the people trying to tell you what kind of food you can eat?
Yep.
What kind of car you can drive? If you'll be allowed to have health care, what kind you'll be able to have? You have to have a car seat. You have to have an airbag. You can't smoke within 5,000 feet of anybody else. But they believe in freedom. I mean, really, it's insulting. It really is insulting. These people, they want to control you. By the way, not to go too far off, but you know when you always hear about Hitler and Mussolini? What do you hear about? They were right-wing, right? Were they really right-wing? Hitler was the head of the Socialist Party of Germany. Socialist Party. Stalin was the head of the Socialist Party of Russia. They were all leftists. But they had to have a boogeyman. They had Stalin on the left as a boogeyman, so they had to counteract that by having somebody on the other side. I don't care if they call them rightist, leftist, whatever. These are people who always think they've got the right to tell you what to do. And one of the things when I ran, what I always talked about with the Declaration of Independence was, have you ever thought about what Thomas Jefferson wrote? You know, I know they do all this highfalutin deep thinking in college and in school, the principles and all. What was he really saying? What did the man really say in that? To King George III, what was he telling him? Who died? I mean, you guys. Where do you get off thinking you have the right to tell me what to do? Absolutely. I'm not kneeling to you anymore. You're flesh and blood. Stop telling me what to do. That's what it really came down to. And I say the same thing to these fellas in Washington. You are not my boss. I don't care if it's George Bush, Barack Obama. You are not my boss. We have a contractual relationship. You're supposed to run the government according to the Constitution, do your job. Does everybody here have health insurance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's say you have it with Blue Cross. Is the President of Blue Cross your boss?
Nope.
No. He can't tell you what to do. He is supposed to take care of the health policy you have. He's got all the power. So where do these other guys get off thinking they've got the divine right to tell you what to do? And that's another reason why something like the FairTax. Power goes back to you. It doesn't stay with them, and that's what they can't handle. They can't reward and punish you anymore via the tax code. Power goes back to you. Now, okay, probably wondering about rates and things like that. The tax rate is either considered 23% or 30%, depending on how you define it, and I'll explain that in a minute. I like to use 30% as the rule of thumb, because it's the easiest way to explain it. So, if I was to buy something for $100, I would add $30 for my tax, I'd pay $130 at the register, and now I'm done. No tax form to file, no IRS worries, nothing. Now, a lot of people say that sounds kind of high, right? But remember what I said to you before? You get 100% of your paycheck. As far as federal, there's only state taxes taken out. Otherwise, you get your entire paycheck, and you get to choose what you buy. Remember also, I said new items. If I buy a used car, no tax. If I buy a used home, no tax. Okay. Now, there's also something in there. Remember I said before about all taxes are gone, also corporate taxes? Corporate taxes are really hidden, embedded taxes. A VAT is a hidden, embedded tax. In other words, all those embedded taxes are coming out now. Remember before I said there's no more corporate tax. So what will happen to the base price of that good?
It should drop.
It will drop. Okay, so it's going down.
It should.
It should. Now will it? How many of us think it will go down? How many of us don't think it will?
If you have a competitive market, it will go down.
In a true free market, it will go down, right? I think we can all agree on that, and I can prove that in a minute, by the way, which I will.
We don't have it right now.
Well, it will go. It would actually go down, and there's a couple reasons why. But the bottom line is that embedded taxes come out. Embedded taxes, in case you're wondering, you ever think about products you buy, how much of the price of that product is actually embedded taxes?
Half probably.
Not half. No, it's not that bad. Okay, Harvard did a study. Came out, God bless you.
Thank you.
22% across the board roughly is what you pay. So when you buy a coat for $100, $22 of that is taxes. And it sounds kind of high, but if you think about it, it makes sense. The wolf, the farmer, person delivering the truck. They all pay taxes. They all pay payroll tax. They pay corporate tax. They pay income tax. They pay all these taxes. By the time you're done, that adds up to about 22% of the price of the product. Now, will 22% come off the price? I doubt it very much. We try to be conservative. We think it would be about 10%. And here's one reason why. Remember before I said your payroll tax is no longer? Doesn't your employer contribute towards your payroll tax? In other words, you pay half of it and they also pay part of the Social Security and Medicare?
Right.
In theory, you can argue to them and say, well, you know, I make $100 a week. I pay $7 towards Social Security and Medicare. You've been paying it for me. That's really part of my payroll. Now that you don't have to pay it, shouldn't I get that money? Mm-hmm. And you'd have a valid point. And a lot of employers may say to you, you're right. So actually, you would get a pay raise in this respect that you're getting that money, number one. But that's another reason why it's still a cost of business for him. So therefore, I don't believe it's going to go down to full 22. But let's go back to, let's assume it'll be about 10%. So now that $100 quote we're talking about, take $10 off of that, that goes to $90. Now here's where the 23 and 30 come in. I say you're going to pay 30% of $90. That's how much? $27, right? So 90 plus 27 equals 117. Your final quote cost will be 117. Now, if you're a W-2 employee in a 15% tax bracket right now, how much money do you have to earn to buy that coat? The average person in America.
50% tax bracket?
15, 1.5. I'm putting it in the lowest bracket. Roughly make it simple, about $123. Because you'd have to make your pay your 15% tax, right? If you netted $100, add 15 for your tax, add 7% for your Social Security and Medicare, add another percent for little excise tax, etc. So you'd be about 123. So you have to make 123. Now you may be thinking, well, if I'm actually paying less, how am I going to raise the revenue, make up the revenue? Because, by the way, the fair tax is designed to be revenue neutral, meaning if the government takes in $2 trillion right now, the fair tax is also at that rate I'm talking about, geared to bring in $2 trillion. Remember what I said before? Now you have 300 million people paying the tax. That's why it'll bring in enough revenue. Because now everybody pays, nobody gets a special exemption.
But the transition period.
I'm sorry.
The transition period, you can't go boom to boom. You probably have to put the fair tax on top of income tax.
No, what happens is, for companies that are holding inventory right now, they get credit for that. So you will pay it on their inventory. For instance, if it's going to start January 1, 2012, and you sell lumber, and you have $10,000 worth of lumber in your yard right now that the embedded tax exemption paid, you will get an exemption for that $10,000. So you are protected. So that way you make the transition. Now, how do I know that the price is going to go down when I mention the embedded tax? Again, I equate everything to baseball, Jackie Robinson. We all know who Jackie Robinson is, right? Okay. Just so you know, I spoke at Rider University last week. Not one kid knew who Jackie Robinson was. I was floored, and I felt old. I really felt old. So, okay, but what did Jackie Robinson do? Jackie Robinson was a Republican. Absolutely right. What did he do? He put the first Major League Baseball player, black baseball player, since the 1880s. A long time. Before that, there was an agreement amongst all the owners. They were not going to allow any of the black ball players to play in the major leagues. Brooklyn Dodgers decided they were going to break that. They were going to bring in Jackie Robinson. Now what? Every other owner, Brooklyn had no decision to make, but every other owner did. They had a decision. Were they going to allow the Brooklyn Dodgers to get all the best black ball players and then promptly get their butts kicked every year because they were going to have the best black ball players along with some of the very best white ball players? So who would have competed with the Brooklyn Dodgers? Nobody. Right? Not a soul. So all these owners, whether they were racist, whether it was just because they thought this was tradition, whatever, they now had a real decision they had to make.